Welcome to episode 4 of Tips for Teachers during the Covid-19 crisis. This episode is going to be about parents. And in the last video, I mentioned that you don't need to prepare material to cover the time period that you normally had classes, that online instruction generally is compressed and there's not as much time involvement. Now, you may be hearing from parents, there's not enough for kids to do, they need more. So I'll address that as a part of this video as well. But I also want to talk about what we're kind of all experiencing, and your parents may be there, and your students may be there. And that is what Kolbe calls the failure factors of fear, frustration, and fatigue. And for your parents, those that you're reaching, they may have lost their jobs, their hours may have been cut back, they're maybe trying to work at home while their children are at home. So there are all these frustrating and stressful things going on in their lives. So compassion will go a long way to trying to work with parents and try to help them through this time period. So before I go on to this, I have a great announcement. During this time, the student aptitude quiz, which helps students understand how they take action and how they naturally problem solve. This student index or student quiz is available online. It's easy to take, doesn't take very long. And during the month of April, due to the crisis here, Kathy Kolbe is going to give away 100,000 of these free to students. So I encourage you to reach out to students that you know need a little bit of a boost or a little bit of help, or any parents who are struggling, or just any child that you know that you think might benefit from really getting a better handle on how to take on the challenges of the new experience in school, as well as what school's normally like, and to have some tips and tricks for being more successful. I can't tell you how excited I am about this. It's a really, really wonderful thing. So pass this on, if you will. I would really appreciate it. I hope that we're able to give away all 100,000. We've got 30 days to do it. And I'm posting this video a little late because that announcement just happened, and I'm actually re-recording this episode to make sure that this announcement gets in there. Okay, let's talk about the 3 tips for dealing with the situation around parents during this time. The first thing is, parents were your students' first teachers. They came to school knowing so much. Think about the vocabulary they had, physical ability they had. Think about having total dependence on others and then moving to relative independence by the time they enter school. Now, I realize a lot of that's developmental, but what you have to keep in mind is it doesn't happen without parents being involved. And parents need to think about how they were involved. They were not directly teaching too much. A lot of it was around encouraging students and celebrating their accomplishments. And that's where parents can be a big help. They don't need to be doing the direct teaching. And really, during this time, many of these students may be experiencing loss in family or people they know, parents as well. So in addition to their whole world being upended in terms of school, they're facing other things, the uncertainty of job prospects and all of that. So during this time, the most important thing, and the things that students will remember from this time, is what it felt like being at home with their parents trying to do school. This is really where our need for social emotional learning really becomes critical here. So it's really important that the parents relax about having to push kids or teach kids so much, and to spend time encouraging them and collaborating with them and really trying to help everybody feel safe, secure, and to make sure that they continue to learn, but they're not feeling undue pressure to do so. That brings me to the third thing that I want to talk about today, which has to do with a concern of how much students will lose. Well, first of all, I know there are studies out there that say that after even a semester off, it takes 2 years for that learning to kind of be recaptured. Those studies have been done in situations where there have been disasters, there have been wars, things like that, where the educational system has been decimated and had to be rebuilt. That is not the case here. In fact, we're shoring up our educational system. We're developing new ways to reach students. The system is going to be more robust after this than it was when we went into it. So I think the regaining what we lose in terms of learning is not going to be such a critical thing. And keep in mind, all students are in the same boat, all across the country. In fact, most of the world, 90% of the world right now, are not in school. So everybody's in the same boat. It's not something where we have to feel like our child is losing out. I mean, everybody's in the same place, and you folks are experts. When those kids get back to school, you'll figure out what they need and you'll get them back up to speed. I don't see that as the big issue. I think our robust educational system, more robust when we get back, and your creativity will fill the bill there. But I think this situation, this crisis, has really identified some things. It's identified that we're not very good at creative problem solving or critical thinking. And those are the things that our students need to be developing. And to develop that, students have to be more engaged. And by that I mean, when there's an expert in the room, you're the expert in the room generally, when there's an expert in the room, people tend to sit back and let the expert kind of guide. What we need is for students to take more responsibility for their own education and take more direct action, and not be so passive about waiting for the next thing. An example of that would be students are at home trying to learn. They may not understand something that they're supposed to be learning, and their parents may not be available to help them, or they're trying to work from home or whatever. When I was teaching, if students came back the next day and said they didn't get the homework, my question for them was always, what did you do about that? I mean, if all you did was stop, then you're not taking responsibility for it. What is it that you could have done? What are all of the things you could have done to try to figure this out when I'm not available, your parents are not available? You could reach out to friends. You could go online and do a search. There's books, there's all kinds of ways. You can try starting from the answer and working backwards. There's all kinds of ways that students can figure things out and take more responsibility. This necessity that they have right now to do that, I think is going to serve them well, because it's going to help develop that critical thinking and that problem solving that you really want students to have. So I'm actually thinking that if you set it up right and you give parents that expectation that yes, students may struggle, but that's not a bad thing. So many parents do not want their kids to struggle. Well, when they were the first teacher of those children, they did struggle. They said words that were not very clear, and the parents are trying to figure out what that word really meant. When they first started walking, they fell down and bumped their heads and cried, and all those things that happened. Those bumps and bruises and falling down and getting up again, there's nothing wrong with that. That's how we get stronger. So we need to relax and not feel like students have to have an easy ride on this. It's okay for them to struggle a little bit and to try to figure things out. It actually builds character and it keeps them moving forward. But especially for our most at-risk kids, there is the tendency for students to stop and feel stuck. And so what we need is to encourage them and to encourage their parents that they can do this, just keep working at it, and let us know where you're at and we'll keep going forward. So encouragement both for parents and for students is critical during this time, and I know you know that and you're probably already doing that. I'd say that the biggest thing with parents is that they need to understand that kids are learning when they're doing other activities that are not formal online lessons or formal worksheet type things, that they're learning whenever they're engaged in imaginative play, especially for the young ones. The imaginative play is wonderful, teaches them so much. Role-playing, creating these situations where kids, especially younger kids, can do more self-exploration, creating games where they design it with the rules or whatever. Those are the kinds of things that kids can do, that parents can appreciate and encourage, that will help the kids learn. And they don't need to worry about whether or not they know the material in this case. They can just engage with the student or engage with their children and move forward in that way. For older kids, it has to do with identifying what's worth learning for them and exploring their own interests or what really they wonder about. I mean, certainly you can broaden it with reading lists and things like that, but you know, when is it that we have an opportunity in education to ask the student, what are you interested in? Students, by stepping up and taking more responsibility, are going to be better students when they return to you. Thanks for watching. Make sure you reach out to students and make sure that parents know about the free student aptitude quiz during the month of April. I've used it for 30 years in my classroom. It's the single most powerful thing I ever did to help students be better learners. Thanks a lot. We'll see you again for episode 5. That'll be the last episode of this series.